Hello, everybody, and welcome to Living with Favor. Favor is an acronym where we talk about faith, abundance, vitality, overflow, and relationships. I am here every week, usually with some expert guest who has amazing advice. I know I've learned from every person that's been on this show. For those of you that have been tuning in regularly and sending me feedback and testimonials, I so appreciate what you've shared and know that a lot of what we're talking about is landing and that you're enjoying the content that we've been creating. You know, we are in week 2 of a 5-part series right now, talking about building stronger relationships. It's called Soul Connections. And I'm doing that because what are the components of great relationships? You know, it's vulnerability, authenticity, accountability, maybe some integrity. So last week we covered vulnerability. This week we're going to dive a little bit deeper, go in a different direction with authenticity. And we're going to define that in a minute as soon as I bring on my guest. You know, our mission really is to inspire the entrepreneurial spirit in you. We want people to succeed in their own business. They take back their own freedoms. They take back their independence when you can when you have an income to rely on, when you're not relying on outside sources. I know it's hard work to be an entrepreneur, but we're here to encourage and inspire and come alongside you to do that. So welcome again. My name is Lisa Mosbey. I'm the host of Living with Favor. And I'm excited to be able to be here every week to give you a little advice, or again, like I said, come alongside you to get things rolling. So this week's expert guest is she's a new friend, she has a special place in my heart, probably one of the most authentic, integrous people that I've ever met. And her name is Becky Sheehan. She's an empathic, intuitive healer and coach who specializes in empowerment, communication, and here's the big one, radical self-love. You know, as women and men, I know that some tune in here, but predominantly the show is watched by women. As women, sometimes we lose space for that radical self-love. I've been taking care of everybody else, and right now you may hear some rasping in my voice because I'm sick, because I didn't put my health and wellness and sleep and nutrition in the front, not before anybody else, but taking care of us actually lets us take care of other people. So radical self-love has a place in our life, and it is not a negative thing to do to take care of ourselves. So, you know, Becky serves as a channel for insight, inspiration, health, healing, and transformation. And I'm so excited to bring her to you over these 5 weeks. I'm going to stop chit-chatting and bring Miss Becky back in here. Becky, come on in. You know, she uncovers and clears limiting perspectives, attitudes, and beliefs that inhibit clients. And, you know, I'm actually working with her as a client of hers, so I can speak to her talent and her ability. So thank you for being with me. I want to sing your praises and rave more, but I'm going to stop and let you join us. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you for this amazing introduction. I am so happy to be here talking about things that are my favorite things to talk about. I love talking about vulnerability, authenticity, and self-love, right? The most important relationship that you have in this whole life experience is your relationship with yourself and with God, right? Those are the most important relationships in this life experience. And so it's so easy for us to focus our attention and building our relationship. I think it's much easier to do a relationship with God than it is to do our relationship with self. At least that's what I've found. And it is of vital importance. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to be talking, especially about authenticity. That really makes me excited. I think that's a conversation that isn't had enough of what that actually looks like to be authentic. It takes a lot of self-love to live an authentic life. It takes a lot of deep appreciation for who you are and who you were created to be in this life experience. I mean, you were created with an intent, like with such purpose. You were created intentionally, and you were given all these gifts. You were given a view, like a lens to view this life with. You were given all these amazing things at your disposal to learn from and to use as you navigate through life. And I think that, you know, as we grow up, we're sort of fostered, our parents sort of foster us with, okay, I have this newborn baby. I'm bringing this newborn baby in this life. I have to teach this baby. First of all, this baby needs to survive, number one, right? Like, I got to keep this baby alive. And like, secondly, I got to make sure that they understand how this world works and like how this is done so that they can make this as easy as possible. So they teach us things that they've learned, that they've found to be beneficial. Well, the amazing thing is, well, that works for your parents. Like, that works for them because the advice that they're giving you is a very subjective advice. It works for their design. It works with how they were created. These were things that they found to be true and valued. That's not who you are. That might be their truth and that might be their experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be your truth or your experience. And that's really important to remember. Because so often we try to live by other people's truths. We try to live by other people's advice. We try to live by everybody else's rules for the game and how they go about doing things as if that's the only way. And, some situations, yeah, you have to stay within those boundaries. But it's really important for you and your relationship with self, in order to be your most authentic self, to be able to figure out, well, where am I in this? Like, how do I feel about all this? How would I go about doing things? Maybe it doesn't have to necessarily look the same way. Maybe I can go about doing things in a way that fits how I was made to show up in this world. And I feel like that's really what authenticity is about, and living authentically is about, is finding the way in this life, in this world, that you show up unique, that aligns with you. So
I think it's hard for people to define it oftentimes. We hear that word a lot right now. It's like, oh, your social media posts need to be authentic. They need to be you. We hear it in business. We hear it in relationships. Oh, the old adage years ago in sales training was fake it till you make it. And that just doesn't fly anymore. People don't want the fake it till you make it. I looked up, or actually, I didn't look it up. I asked AI because AI is the new dictionary. I asked AI, what's the difference between vulnerability and authenticity? So I'm going to share that with our audience. It says vulnerability refers to the willingness to expose your emotions or experiences that may lead to the risk of being hurt or judged. It's about opening up and showing your true self, including your fears, flaws, and uncertainty. Vulnerability is often seen as a strength because it requires courage to be emotionally transparent and to connect with others on a deeper level. That kind of sounds like authenticity to me too, but let's look at the difference. It says authenticity. On the other hand, authenticity is being genuine and true to oneself. It means acting in accordance with your beliefs, your values, your principles, rather than conforming, exactly what you said, conforming to external expectations and pressures. Authenticity involves presenting your real self to the world without pretense or facade. So the words are so interchanged in there, but vulnerability is about truth, speaking about your fears, flaws, and uncertainties. That's what comes up for me is, can you do it? We were having a conversation. I was expressing to Becky before we started this, some of the challenges I'm going through and then getting sick on top of that. And, we've never met face to face, but yet there's this connection, this bond, this soul connection, because we work together through the Morning Rush, which is a morning empowerment call. She knows me and I can be vulnerable with her and I can share my fears and flaws and uncertainties and, stuff that's coming up right now. Wow, who are the people in our lives that we can do that with? And how does that come into business? What do you think, Becky? How do we bring that in? Should we be sharing those things with people that we're in business with or people that we want to do business with?
That's a really interesting question. I think my answer would be cautiously yes,
Cautiously.
right? Cautiously
Yeah.
yes, right? You want to be able to be vulnerable and authentic in a way that I feel is relevant for your environment. right? If you're in a workplace and there you have a lot going on, let's say like you're you're overwhelmed with your work environment. There's a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of different personal things that you have at home that's factoring into how you're showing up at work, how you're going through day to day. That's relevant. What you have going on there is relevant. So having those sort of conversations, maybe with, if you're really, really struggling, being able to feel comfortable and safe to have a conversation with somebody at work and just sort of invite them into, I'm really struggling right now. This is really becoming a lot for me to work with. I have a lot of things that I'm trying to leave at the door that are coming in home, that are from home, that are coming into play here. And I'm not doing too good. I really need a helping hand. I really need some advice. I really need some guidance. If you need help and guidance and advice, you need to enroll people into a little bit of what's going on with you. And that requires for you to be real and vulnerable. Um, I feel like that's really effective. The more vulnerable and real you are, the better. Now, you don't have to leave everything in the kitchen sink there. You don't have to go
No.
back into like where this whole story originally started. And oh, like here's what's happening with my kids. And oh, here's what's happening with my grandma. Or oh, here's what's happening with that. You can kind of sum it up with there's a lot of different family things going on at home. There's a lot of different emotions. A lot of different people are counting on me. And I'm struggling with that. I'm struggling with the burden of that. That's telling them you're being just as vulnerable with that statement than with going into all the details. Like maybe all those details aren't important, but the spirit of what's actually happening to you is affecting your workplace environment, is affecting how you're doing your job, is affecting how you're showing up. So maybe you find those people that you feel safe enough to be vulnerable with. And that's another important thing is, do you have people in your workplace environment that feel safe to share that with? Do you have people that are maybe work above you that you feel safe in having those conversations with? That's huge. And
Like
I
they have your
think,
back.
yeah, and I think that that's why this conversation about vulnerability is coming up so much more than it used to around leadership, is because I think people have really start to recognize that you need, as a leader, you want your employees functioning at their best. You want them to show up to work, raring to go, getting the stuff done. And if they're not okay, if they're struggling with that, part of the leadership is looking in at what's going on and saying, how can I help you so I can get you, or so that we can both get you to where you want to be, where you like, ideally you're not carrying that whole entire burden, and you can show up more powerfully in a way that honors you more in this environment. So that's a really interesting conversation. I think we were talking a little bit before we started about the importance, especially in the workplace, the importance of leaders to have integrity. It was a really interesting
Yeah.
conversation we started to have, right? Because
Yeah.
if you want to foster vulnerability and honesty in your workplace, you have to lead with integrity. You have to be somebody that is trustworthy, right? You have to create as our friend Trina likes to say, a psychologically safe environment, right? People need to be able to trust you, to be open. Being vulnerable is a very brave and bold thing because it
Takes courage.
requires, yeah, it requires trust. It
Yeah.
requires trust. And as a leader, if you really want to facilitate that in your business, you need to lead with integrity. You need to show all of your employees or all the people that you work around that you're somebody that can be trusted. And that looks like being a person of your word. That looks like respecting people's time. Um, Brene Brown references in Dare to Lead that time is like the most valuable resource that a person can offer you, because it's something that nobody can ever get back. And so really being respectful of somebody's time, showing up on time, really, that's such an important thing. And it's an important part of integrity, I feel like. Um, Being an integrous leader really facilitates a psychologically safe environment where people can be vulnerable, where people can get real. And as a result of that, you can get to the root of problems and you can address all the issues that are actually going on and help heal those issues in order to make everything just elevate and go back to functioning at full speed and roaring straight ahead. And that's really what we want in our workplace
You-
environments. And it's what
Yeah,
we want at
the
home
word,
too.
yeah, the word that keeps coming up for me is transparency. I know so many companies that are not transparent. Like their employees don't know where we're going. And we as entrepreneurs, don't necessarily know when we're doing business with somebody who's an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, somebody who has a small business, do we know what they stand for? Do we know what their beliefs are, their mission, their vision, their purpose of their business? Why are they doing what they're doing? I think that it takes courage to get clear and tell people, hey, you know what? I want to put food on my table. I've been let go of other jobs. I don't want to be responsible, or I don't want to be accountable to that corporation that sees me as a number, and they don't have uh, you know respect for me. And they may let me go at Christmas time, or people have experienced lots of trauma from corporations that we thought were integrous, corporations that we thought were acting in integrity, but yet they don't treat their employees all that great. And so how do we it's transparency. Like if those corporations are struggling financially, why wouldn't you tell your employees, hey, we're going to have some cutbacks, or we're going to have to make some changes? I know during COVID, I wish I could remember the name of the company. I'll have to Google it and find it. But there was one company, a large corporation, and they didn't want to do cutbacks. They didn't want to lay people off. They wanted to allow people to continue to work. And so those people that had enough money said, you know what, I'll give up my PTO to, so that other people can still earn money. And all the employees for this company started to pitch in to help them keep going, to help the company sustain and keep going. They worked together. Different people chose when they would be furloughed, when it made more sense to them. And those people that needed to work full time and couldn't be furloughed, stayed on. They were allocated more time from other employees who were willing to give up that time. You're creating that community when you have transparency as the leadership of a company, whether it's an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or big corporations. When we create that transparency, it takes courage, though, to tell people your flaws, your fears, what's happening in your business. There's this scarcity model that if I tell them that things are tight right now, then everybody will leave. They may go apply for other jobs or something like that, rather than banding together. But that's not been my experience. What I've seen is that when you create and you foster that family environment, when you are authentic and real and vulnerable and honest, and you let people know that you care about them, it creates that family environment, that network where people want, that community where people want to actually work together rather than just take off. It fosters trust, right?
Absolutely. The first thing I think about is when it comes to mind is there's usually um in family dynamics, right? There's usually like one of two ways, primary ways that people parent. There's like those parents that are like, the kids don't need to know anything that's happening. Like everything is done in private and whispers. We don't want the kids to know. We don't want them to bother them or any way or disrupt them. Everything is fine with the kids. And meanwhile, behind closed doors, things might be falling apart. And there's another sort of approach to it where, you sit down and you have a talk with the kids and you let them know what's actually going on, but reassure them that everything is safe and everything is okay. And they might have questions, and you answer those questions and you address all of their fears and insecurities and whatnot, but you enroll them in the conversation. I think that for a very, very long time, it was expected for most parents to operate that first way, where you just protecting the kids. You don't need to worry them unnecessarily. You don't need to stifle them. But I think what happens is, as a result of that sort of approach, you start to, and it's a very natural, normal thing to do. Kids understand that there's something wrong.
They feel it.
They feel it energetically, they see it,
Mhm.
they hear it, they know that something is happening, and they don't have the information to understand what exactly is going on. They start to write a story for themselves to help explain what's actually happening, because they need to have some sort of understanding. It's scarier not to have an understanding of what's going on. It's a very horrible place of being. So you'll write a story to try to help yourself make understand what's actually happening around you. And those stories can be so far-fetched, so off topic. And a lot of times, especially for a child, you think, oh, this has to do with me. You start to paint yourself like this
Yep,
is a
my fault.
result of me. Yeah, I did something. This must be because I spilled my milk earlier today, or this must be because of something else that happened earlier today. And just as a result of that, people, human beings, are creating a lot of destructive beliefs that I work hard to start. My whole business is on working hard to try to unravel and destroy a lot of those beliefs that we created along the way. Same thing is true with a corporation, right? We have lots of companies that sit there and try not to let the kids or the employees know exactly, you don't want to worry them. Everything's business as usual. Everything's happening. And then all of a sudden, the next day they come in, they lay off half the employees, and people's lives are devastated and destroyed, not
And they
really
suspect
having,
it. Mhm.
not expecting it. Right. So they're
Yeah,
just
but
kind of
suspected.
leveled and gutted.
Yeah.
But there are those businesses, and those businesses really light me up when they make it a point to enroll people in the why. This is what we're doing, and now I'm going to tell you why we're doing it this way. And for just that moment, yeah, it takes a little bit more time to really sort of being transparent, but they're showing the why of why we're changing our approach, why we might be doing things differently, why we're asking you to do this. This is the reasoning behind the why. When you enroll everybody in the why, you're kind of bringing everybody in on your team. You're making it like a big team community effort, right?
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
telling people, here's the play. This is the play, like, this is what we're trying to do. Here's our play. I want you all in on it. Maybe they have something that would be of value to help facilitate this and make this more valuable. Maybe just understanding and knowing will cause them to show up in a more powerful way. I love it in a business when people tell their why, and they also say, and we want to make money, of course. The moment people are transparent of the fact that they want to make money,
That's why
I
you're in business.
I automatically trust them, because I'm like, this is somebody who's really being honest now,
Mhm.
because they're addressing that fact that a lot of these changes, a lot of the things that we're doing, yeah, it's in alignment with our mission and our goal, but it's also to make money. And we're not going to pretend like that's not there. The moment people have those conversations and recognize, and we're going to make money in the process, I I find them incredibly trustworthy. Just that point of transparency and that point of pure honesty, I feel so much more relieved and better. But
Creates loyalty, yeah. That transparency creates loyalty and engagement
yeah,
and engagement,
yeah.
right? And, sales. It fosters, yeah, the loyalty, I think, is the big thing that it creates, because it kind of comes back to, we had this conversation earlier this week on the morning rush when, we were talking about the community. What do you expect out of this community? What do you want to happen in this community? And it's really the leadership that's, they created it, they designed it. It's important for that leadership to kind of direct what we want from it. And then other people get to choose to show up or not, or maybe find the other communities that they want to get into. There's many different communities that people can be a part of. When we can identify what makes us special or unique, not just that we want to form a community or we want to have, an empowerment call. Those words are so generic, but when we can
Mhm.
drill down, we're creating a space with integrity where people can bring their issues and get help, get input, get coached. Identifying how you show up. You mentioned your why or your mission statement. Um, there's no new products really. There's very few new products. There's very few new services, but yet there's a uniqueness about every company that's in business. What is your uniqueness and how do you share that uniqueness? Everybody wants to make money. Let's be honest about that. Otherwise you wouldn't be in business. But then identifying your why. What are the 20 problems that you solve for people? How do you solve them differently than somebody else? That's what brings in the client that's going to want to do business with you. That's that authenticity of drilling down and not being surface level, like dig deeper. Why did you go into business to do this? Whatever that reason is. For me, I went through a divorce, started over, didn't have my own income. I had always been an entrepreneur. And so I know the struggles that I went through when I lost my business partner, my life partner, I lost majority of my income. It's like, wow, could I have protected myself? That's what I do. What I do now is working with primarily women who are entrepreneurs to help them get set up so that they have residual financial stream of income coming in so that when things happen, when kids get sick, when you're taking care of grandparents, when you go through some trauma in life, some sort of a loss of a significant other or a business partner, are you financially set to take care of those things? That to me is that transparency, that authenticity of why I do what I do. I don't tell people that enough. And I
Yeah.
realize that. So that's something that I need to shift for 2024. Because I think when people hear that piece of it, my motivation, my mission, my values, why I want to help them, that causes me to stand out from other people in business.
That's the most important part. As
Yeah.
my perspective and point of view, that is the most important part. I can understand. I love when I talk to people, especially when I get lots of sales pitches and stuff like that. They kind of like you roll out everything. This is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to, this is how this can affect you if you invest with us or whatnot. They give me all the stats. They give me all the information. They give me everything that most people, I assume they think most people are looking for.
Yeah.
Me, I'm just kind of like, don't even show me that because I'm not going to pay attention to that. I want to hear your why. Like, I want to hear what brought you here to begin with. I want to hear why this. Where's your heart? What's your passion in this? If you can enroll me in your heart, if you can enroll me in your passion, I'm there with you. Now I can look at everything. Now I can see everything. Now I'd be like, okay, what are you going to do? Because at least for me personally, the why is the most important factor. And I want to team up with people's whys. That's really what I want to do. I want to team up with people's whys. I want to team up with what about this project lights you up? What about this project ignites passion in you? What about this project really is what you're making a stand for? And if I can align with that, if you can get me on board with that, then let's go on this journey together. Let's do this. And I think that it really frustrates me that the why isn't being shared enough. I want to start with that. Tell me your why. First and foremost, before anything else, tell me your why. And from there, everything else will, at least for me, falls into place. But
It's
that's
what makes
living
you stand
authentic.
out. Yeah, I think it's what makes you stand out in a crowded marketplace. People want to do business with folks who have similar values and beliefs as to what they have or where they are in their life. And so if we don't know that, it doesn't, there's no draw to that person necessarily. But if they share that, it's what makes them stand out in a crowded marketplace. There's tons of business coaches out there. There's tons of business advisors out there. What makes me stand out amongst all of those different people is my passion for serving women of a certain age range to help them get their voice out there, to help them build and expand their brand online so that they can create a residual income. Like, I'm sure there's other people out there that do that. But for me, telling people that up front, I cut through all of the other stuff. It's like, nope, I'm not that kind of coach. I'm more of an advisor or a consultant. And here's how I come alongside you to help you. Simple, clear, and it's either there's some place where we can go with this, we can collaborate with it, or next, or I can refer them to somebody else who's, who can help them with what they're looking for. We don't always have to force the issue, glean the field, take everybody in under our wing. I want to work with people who are an ideal client for me, not everybody. When we say, oh, I can serve everybody, that is not a true statement. Nobody can serve everybody because you're just not in alignment. When we get in alignment with folks, and we get in alignment through being vulnerable, being authentic, being of integrity, creating trust, fostering trust in your relationships, and letting people know what you stand for. That's how we get in alignment, how we find out if we're in alignment. And if we are, you're probably going to create a more successful relationship than if you force it, if you don't try to get in alignment on something. Doesn't mean we have to line up perfectly, but what is the shared belief? What is the shared bond that's going to allow us to work better together, whether it's values or beliefs or your why?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this is such a great topic. I love talking about being real and being honest and being authentic, and all these things that we're touching upon are so absolutely powerful. For me, like, there's a distinction of why I love authenticity is because we are people. We are human beings, right?
Yeah.
Each one of us is unique and interesting and distinct and different. I love it in a conversation where I can raise my hands and be like, I'm passionate about this. I do this, and great. This is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
People know that going in with me, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is not my strong suit. These areas are not me. I can try. I can tell you this. I'll give it a go. I give it a try. But going in, you should need to know that these things are not my strong suit. Maybe you get enrolled in the job or the project. Maybe you don't. But you're going to find yourself as a result of being very authentic, knowing yourself, having a really good understanding of who you are and how you show up, having a really good understanding on what motivates you, what's your why, like what it is that lights you up, right? Having all of that awareness about yourself, you will now know that if I am completely authentic in who I am, and I'm straightforward and I'm transparent of what you're going to get with me to somebody that I'm working with or collaborating with or engaged with. When they take me on, I'm not going to be in a situation where I'm in over my head. I'm not going to be in a situation where I'm biting off more than I can chew. And that in itself, creating that environment for yourself, is just so freeing and so liberating, and it allows you to do your work with a greater degree of joy. I've been in those situations where I was I'm a rehabbing people pleaser. I want to make everybody happy. I want to make, yes, I can do that. Yes, I'll do that with integrity. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm it. I'm your girl. I'm your go-to kind of gang up girl here. And I'm like, I am so lost. I don't know how to do half of this stuff. And my Google education doesn't happen nearly fast enough, right? YouTube only helps me so much. YouTube's very helpful for that. I have to
Yes.
say, thank God
Good
for
resources,
YouTube,
for
right? When you're
sure.
in
Yes.
over your head. Yeah. But sometimes I'm just kind of like, and I have to have those conversations. And I've had those conversations many times where I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I thought I can handle this. I thought I knew how to do this, but my skill level isn't really where this project needs to be met. Like, my skill level is not developed enough to approach this with integrity. I can keep on working on it if that's okay with you, but I would need more time, or I'm going to allow you the opportunity to hand it off to somebody else that might be able to work better. Like, I'm not going to give up. I agreed to do something that I was in over my head with. I agreed to do something. I'll still do it. But I just want you to know that I'm a little bit in over my head. If you have nobody else, I'll still go at it. I'll still do it. I'll do it for you to completion. That's what I agreed to. I'm in integrity with that agreement. I'm going to honor that agreement, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to maybe pass it off or find another solution that is more alignment with the outcome that you're looking for.
Well said.
And those are really hard conversations that require a great deal of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
But it also requires a great deal of authenticity, that you know yourself well enough to know what I'm capable of doing, and what might be a little bit too much for me.
And I think that honesty and integrity doesn't necessarily, the person wouldn't necessarily go to somebody else. They would, in most cases, for my experience, people respect that. I would want to have somebody who's going to be forthcoming with me and let me know and where they're struggling. And they're not afraid to come to me, and perhaps we can collaborate and move it forward. They're willing to take on a challenge to do what it takes to get it done and be in integrity for that, versus somebody who's just kind of going to go at it and maybe not, you know, not do the job as well. And I'm going to always be wondering, where are we at with this? So
Yeah.
I think that there's value in this, even though it's difficult, a difficult conversation, but showing up from the heart and being honest and integrous with people, exactly saying it exactly the way that you did. I want to open this up. We have a few people in the audience. I see Anna keeps posting hearts. Something's resonating. If anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question or join the conversation, we would love to invite you in here. We've been talking for over a half hour. So yeah, come on in if you have a question, feel free.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for the conversation, and thank you for the integrity part. It's really resonate with me, because a lot of time people don't have that courage or that integrity to tell others where they are at and what they are capable of, and that track down the whole thing. So thank you very much for bringing it up here. Yes, and also in this conversation, I heard about tell me your why and tell me where your heart is. I wholeheartedly believe that, because whenever you want to do business with others, you need to see yourself in that person. And how can you do that if that person don't even open up to you? So that part is a very crucial part of creating a bonding relationship, not even with business, just with any relationship. You really need that vulnerability and that openness to let people know who you are, where you're heading, and what you are all about. So thank you very much for bringing it up in this conversation. And I think it's very valuable. Another part is also the candid. It's a radical candid conversation. Yes, there are integrity in that, and then also courage to be transparency, and to speak to the other person in the way that loving and empower them, but still pointing out where they are off, and would be able to be of service to them. So yeah, those are the things that I get from this talk, and thank you very much for bringing it into our conversation today.
Oh, thank you so much for the recap. On boy, you have some great notes there. You took me through the whole conversation with your notes. So wonderful that you would share that back with us and kind of recap it. And I'm glad that you found value in the conversation with Becky. Becky, any other thoughts on what An shared?
Yeah, this brings up, there was something I'm trying to remember exactly what she said, but it brought up a story that Brene Brown painted really beautifully in her leadership book, But Dare to Lead. And one of the things was in having those type of vulnerable conversations with people you work with, being really realistic, maybe with somebody like, oh, I can get this done, but in order for me to get this done, it requires me to drop, like, I won't be able to do this. I won't be able to do this. I won't be able to do this if you want this done in this amount of time. And so having those kind of conversations, like, what do you need? Maybe this is what I require at this point for me to complete this task in the time frame that you want me to complete this task. Like this is what I would require in order to do that. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get it done in this time. You enroll other people to kind of allow them to help you through that process, right? So like in this particular illustration that I'm thinking about, you know, the employer found other people to come on in and take the tasks that would have to be discarded by the person in order for them to complete the task at hand. So how can we invest other people to help you to carry through this so that everything gets done properly? There's a little bit of a dance, a little bit of a redistribution that might need to take place. And that's the reality of every workplace. Sometimes in order to get things done, you have to kind of, you know, redistribute your priorities. You have to kind of like rearrange what your normal day-to-day looks like. You might have to say, I have to put this on hold. I have to put this on hold. I'm going to get this done first. I'm going to do it to completion, but all that other stuff is on hold. Can it be on hold? Is there any way that I can invest other people or ask other people if they can contribute to help me out so that nothing falls on the wayside? Those are all important, vital conversations to have in business. Imagine if you didn't have those conversations. Imagine if you just kept quiet and you're just trying to chug along and all these things kind of fell on the wayside and you dropped the ball. And then everybody's like, well, where's this? Where's this? You got this done. Where's this, this, and this? And you're like, I didn't have time. That looks bad on you. That's a really bad look. And you don't want to wear that look, right? You want to be able to sit there and say, I want to, you know, this is what I have going on. I need other people to kind of contribute or help me get styled better so that at the end of the day, we all look really good.
Yeah, I see Ann raise your hand again. Do you want to come back in here on that, Ann? Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. Then how can you instill that vulnerability in an environment, not necessarily business, but mostly in business, because when you are vulnerable, that is when you are open for judgment, when you're open for critique, when you're open for a lot of bad things could things could go south there. So how can you create that environment for vulnerability?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I can only answer to how I would go about creating that offhand.
Yeah.
My style is just to ask that very question. Am I safe to be vulnerable here? Am I safe to be honest here? Um, it's a really pointed question that usually takes people off guard. But I find that if they give you the permission and the safety to be honest, and they say yes, like, yeah, please go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say. And be like, well, I'm gonna, you know, this is the reality. And I'm not saying this to complain. I'm not saying this because I don't want you to judge. I'm not saying this to complain, but this is the reality of the situation that I have on hand, blah, 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 blah. And if they're integrous, right? If they're acting in integrity, they agreed that this was a safe place to be vulnerable. And it's not, they can't, if they're standing in integrity, they really can't come at you a whole lot for it. They can have an interesting conversation around it. They can open up their own concerns around it. They can, you know, really develop a really intense, interesting conversation where both sides become vulnerable. The more you practice those vulnerable conversations, the more you're actually creating that environment, like long-term, to begin with. But you have to sort of speak up and say, this is what's required right now. I'm inviting you to create this with me. Yes or no? Can you create this environment where it's safe to be vulnerable? Can you create a psychologically safe environment with me? Or is that something that's not possible or not feasible? If you find that somebody's immediately defensive about that question that you pose, then you know that that's not a safe place to be vulnerable and you don't need to go any further. But that is a challenge. And that's why I really feel like more and more companies and more businesses are doing vulnerability training. It's being stressed, the importance of creating psychologically safe environments is paramount. It's almost, more and more corporations and businesses are requiring that, because you need your employees to be real. You need your employees to be honest, or else you're going to have a whole business that's falling apart because people are scared to speak up that they're being overwhelmed. People are scared to speak up that they don't have the resources to complete their task. People are being scared to speak up that, they need more people with different skills to be in on a project or in on a task, that things aren't being done to the level or the extent that the business is expecting it to be done at. You need to have those conversations in order to have a very healthy, well-functioning business. And I think people are starting to understand that slowly, but more and more, the importance of that. So they're starting to train their leaders. They're starting to require that, that they take vulnerability workshops or listen to podcasts like we're doing right now to sort of kind of get a little bit more information about the importance of vulnerability in a workplace and how it starts with them, and how it starts with creating an environment, how it starts with maybe requiring a leader to be vulnerable first, to open up. That's sort of allowing them to say, hey, this is safe. I'm going to show you how safe this environment is. I'm going to be vulnerable first. And I'm going to show you that, when I got this job, I was in over my head too. I see you're struggling. I got this job. I was in over my head. I struggled. I tried to make it all work, not say anything, but eventually it all kind of came crashing down, and I recognized the importance of speaking up. And I kind of feel like, I'm curious to know whether or not you're in that same place right now, or you're in that same space. And now you're creating a vulnerable conversation where you're really getting to know where your employee's at and how you can best help them, how you can best come alongside them and really help them grow into their potential and really get the job done also. But it starts with leadership. And sometimes if the leadership isn't there and it's not being leading with vulnerability and it's not leading with integrity, attention needs to be called to that. And it takes a really sort of brave person to call attention to that in a very, professional, mature way. But it takes questions like, is this safe? Am I safe to be vulnerable with you? Am I safe to be real and honest with you in this moment? Can I do that right now without being judged? Can I talk to you now without any sort of judgment, without any feeling embarrassed or shamed or whatnot? Like, is that a possibility here? And starting to actually create those possibilities where they might not have been one to begin with. But sometimes that's what it takes.
One of the other things that comes up for me, Becky, is the language that we choose in that conversation on when we are you, like you did this wrong, or here's what I expect of you, or you, when we're using the word you versus using the word I and speaking from here's my preference. This would be my expectations. Here's how I see this project coming to fruition. Can I get your input on it? So, conscious language, when we accuse others, that doesn't create a safe space. But when we as leaders can lead from, here's my expectations, here's what I'm looking for, do you feel that, you have the skills to meet the need that we're trying to accomplish here? The language that we use takes away some of that judgment, and it does also foster people being able to speak up. It allows them, you're asking the question and letting them assess themselves rather than you judging or assessing or making assumptions about what they can and cannot do. So that's from the leader's perspective. And then if you're the receiver, if you're, having the expectations put on you, creating clarity, here's what I'm hearing you say. do I have this right? This is the outcome that you're looking for. These are the steps that I'm hearing you're asking of me. I want to refine this and get crystal clear on this so that I can meet the expectations. So if we always talk, and this is really foreign for me because I was taught never to speak I, like that word, that letter I was erased from my vocabulary. It was all about the we and the group and all inclusive. So now we're shifting back into a different place where we don't speak for other people. We can only speak for ourselves, and we can only create clarity for ourselves. And I think maybe that's kind of where you're going with a little bit of this too, Becky, is this a safe space for me? Can I be honest? Can I share this? Talking from the first person. Let's bring in Sophia.
Hey, yep, I gotta jump in at this
Sorry,
point.
not Sophia.
No,
Sophie, sorry.
you're
I
good.
read it wrong. Thanks,
No,
Sophie.
no problem at all. Yeah, first of all, this conversation is fantastic. I love every second of it, also because it's extremely applicable to me, like right now, like ongoing. Becky knows a little bit more because I had called her yesterday. I had to have a conversation with my mentor yesterday about my situation at work and kind of how I've been struggling a little bit. And everything you guys have been saying has kind of, it's spot on. It's so spot on. And I think just stating the facts and what you know yourself, even though you might not know everything, you can say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what's going on. And then just leaving it for them to kind of like pick up what they need to. And then like that, them asking questions is kind of how you get to the middle ground of where you move forward from there, like from where you're at. And then kind of what I'm seeing, or like, I guess the question that I have is vulnerability kind of that like gateway to authenticity? Because what I'm seeing, or like what I'm experiencing firsthand, is like me opening up immediately led to like I felt less guarded. I felt like I could say stuff. Like when you address the hard things, it makes other things come up, and it's so much easier. You kind of get to a deeper connection, more clarity, more trust in that sense.
Yeah,
That's
and
a
it's like, can I share where I'm coming from or what I see? And that's not a criticism or a judgment of somebody else. It's like I want to create clarity for me and my understanding. So I think you're headed in the right direction. Absolutely. Becky, thoughts?
I think they feed into each other. I think that's really interesting how vulnerability maybe can create authenticity. I've always sort of thought of it the opposite way, but I see how they feed into each other so beautifully. I mean, for me personally, authenticity allows me to be vulnerable. For me, getting real with myself, um, I'm allows me to be able to then speak my truth with vulnerability, right? To be able to share what my truth is, to share my situation. But definitely I can see how that would work the other way in certain occasions. I'm playing with that thought. It's a very interesting awareness that I'm glad that you kind of brought to the table. But like, I really feel like when you know yourself and you're just getting real with yourself, that's another way to look at authenticity. Like, get real with yourself. Like, let's just get honest with yourself and get real. What's going on with you? What's actually happening there? When you're able to just sort of recognize and own it, like, hey, I'm really disorganized, right? I'm like a complete disorganized mess. That's being vulnerable, but it's also kind of allowing you to look at that in that moment and say, is that who I am? Am I a disorganized person? Or am I actually somebody else? Am I better than that? Like, do I actually show up better than that? And I'm just allowing outside circumstances to sort of create and dictate how I'm showing up in the world. So maybe that's an opportunity for me to say, no, that's not who I am. And it's time for me to start living authentically and start living from a place of showing that I'm not a disorganized mess. I'm actually really quite organized and put together. And what's it going to take for me to, live that fully? What does that look like for me to actually live that fully? And so I do see how vulnerability can lead to moments of authenticity when looking at it like that. So thank you for that powerful awareness, Sophie. Yeah.
We are at our, we're kind of getting close to our time here. I want to wrap this up. You know, we are in a 5-week series. So next week, we're talking about, and this is a heavy load, Becky. This one's all on you next week. Embracing emotional intelligence. That's what we're talking about. Embracing emotional intelligence. You know, we've talked about vulnerability. We've led into authenticity. We threw in a little integrity, which was not on our list, but we found that it was an important part of this. And now we're diving into the embracing emotional intelligence. Oh, there's some books out there about this. There's a need for this. We have not been able to master our emotions, and we lead with our emotions so often. So we invite you back. We hope that you tune in, or if you're watching the recording, feel free to check out next week's emotional intelligence. Embracing emotional intelligence is what we'll be getting into. That's it for us today. You know, if I really want you to experience joy and personal fulfillment in the work that you do. My team and we support business owners with simple solutions. We help you get your voice and your, voice out there and expand your brand using social media and digital marketing. So if I can be of service to you, you can find me at lisamosbey.com, and that's LISAMOSBEY.com. And Miss Becky, where do folks find you? You're on mute.
Thank you. That doesn't help me at all. You can find me at BeckyShee.com. If you are looking for healing, coaching, radical self-love, how to improve communication in your relationships, or just learning about who you were created to be in this life experience, I am more than happy to help you out.
Wonderful. All right, everybody, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye.